It is not required for a middle school graduate to hand over. I'll ask the elite with college degrees. You're fired, then. Johnson laughed savagely, and Williams, his toady, did the same. You're correct. You are useless as long as we college grads are present. After giving them both a close look, I declared, this will have serious consequences. However, they merely exchanged glances and chuckled. I had not seen Johnson for a long time till I retired. He appeared gaunt. Johnson caught me in front of the ticket gate and repeatedly pleaded with me to fix the system. I don't understand what's wrong with the system, Williams stated with a sad expression as I turned to face him. He didn't, of course. A college degree isn't enough to handle that system. However, I was no longer among them. I'm not sure. You must solve it on your own. I don't feel sorry for people who made fun of me for finishing middle school. That business might not survive long at this rate. As I passed through the ticket barrier, I thought. My name is James Smith, and I work at an office. I am 41. I oversee the data analysis division of Company A, which supplies industrial indirect materials. The procurement of materials used by construction businesses on a daily basis, such as glass windows for apartment entrances and blue tops for construction, is managed by an industrial indirect materials company. Order fulfillment for customers is more difficult than it seems. For instance, an Italian restaurant can quickly go to a local grocery to purchase more olive oil if they run out during business hours, allowing them to keep serving patrons. They can still serve Italian food, at least. However, work will stop if 10 tons of concrete are required and there is no cement available, which you cannot just buy at a store. Company A has an order forecasting system to avoid these kinds of scenarios, and the important data is handled by my data analysis department. The sales department frequently believes that we only gather unintelligible data, although that is not at all the case. Actually, our department is the company's lifeblood. The management team and President Jones are fully aware of this, which is why they want me to attend the monthly executive meetings and share my thoughts. Johnson, the recently hired sales manager, is the one who objects to this treatment, though. The newly hired Johnson was given a chance to introduce himself during this month's executive meeting. Johnson is my name. I worked for Corporation B, a significant trade corporation, after graduating from Boston University. On the first of the month, I started working here as the sales manager. There seem to be a lot of Boston University alums here, and I'm excited to speak with you. According to my initial assessment, he took great pride in his intellectual background, but it appeared that others didn't share this sentiment. The fact that I just have a middle school certificate may have contributed to my feelings. It was my turn to get up and welcome everyone after the managers and executives had given their introductions. Smith is my name. The department in charge of data analysis is me. Good to meet everyone. Head, Johnson said, raising one eyebrow. I assumed that managers and higher were the target audience for this executive meeting. Do you have a particular presentation to make today? Johnson asked in a haughty manner. The fact that I, a person in my 40s, was surrounded by managers and executives in their 50s and 60s appeared strange to Johnson, who was in his 50s. No, that isn't true. President Jones shifted the topic as I was hesitant to clarify. Well, don't worry about that. Let's discuss the present problems now. Jones' sentiment made perfect sense to me. Because our department deals with a lot of internal, secret data, he didn't want to bring too much attention to the data analysis department. For instance, a department's performance would greatly increase if I released particular data to them. But there are two sides to that. The corporation as a whole frequently suffers losses even when a department's performance momentarily improves. That's why my data analysis department doesn't share analysis results with any other department and has a confidentiality agreement with the corporation. We had a data leak event once, so it could sound overly stringent. There was an affair going on at the time between a female sales representative and her supervisor in the data analysis department. It seems that he complied with her request to reveal order-related information. People around her started to suspect her as her performance took off, and the incident was made public. The woman and her boss were, of course, dismissed. Owing to unforeseen circumstances, I assumed the role and put in a lot of effort to protect the data collection system and put preventative measures in place. I still believe that the department head position was not worth the trouble. To avoid any events like data leaks, our department reports directly to the president, even though it is officially a part of the sales department. Johnson was upset, though, that I didn't respond to his query and that the president stood up for me. He began interacting with me in an obnoxious manner after the meeting. "Give me a moment, please." I was teaching my subordinates one day when Johnson burst into the room without knocking. Even the sales manager is prohibited from entering the data analysis department's room without authorization for security reasons. Johnson, however, appeared utterly indifferent. Johnson grinned and posed an unexpected query as I moved forward. "Smith, could you tell me where you're from?" I believed that I had misheard. Who, while at work, inquires about someone's hometown? However, he remained my boss, so I responded solemnly, "I'm from Louisville, but why does that matter?" "No, that's not what I mean," Johnson said, raising his voice as he clicked his tongue. "Could you tell me where you attended school? You must have graduated from a reputable university because you attend executive meetings and the president has such high regard for you, right?" Johnson kept grinning. I could only answer honestly, even though I knew he already knew the answer. It didn't need to be concealed. In Louisville, I went to a public middle school. Back then, I didn't attend college. Johnson grinned and began to nag at me. Thus, that is accurate. Smith doesn't even have a high school degree, according to what I've heard from other supervisors. I couldn't believe it because I've only ever had postgraduates or college grads as subordinates. Well, it's unbelievable that someone in this organization actually doesn't have a degree or a high school diploma. I initially tried to keep quiet and go back to work because I've been made fun of for similar reasons numerous times previously. However, Johnson continued, "You are technically one of my subordinates because your department is a component of the sales department. You become responsible if something goes wrong because you only completed middle school. As you know, there are a lot of these examples. Are you suggesting that I'll cause trouble?" I responded, a little irritated. Johnson gestured toward me as though he had discovered my vulnerability. "You see, I mean it. Diploma-less people aren't exactly submissive. I was just wondering why you don't have a diploma. Were you impoverished, incarcerated, or something? Because I just completed middle school, was he really treating me like a criminal? I traveled abroad when I was 16, therefore I don't have a high school or college degree. You don't need to worry because I won't cause any issues. Additionally, please leave the room as we are handling sensitive information here." Johnson objected, saying he was the manager and all that, when I tried to show him out. However, I was able to eject him from the room, and he spent the entire day tinkering with computers while earning a hefty salary. You won't get away with it now that I'm here. Keep it in mind. I let out an exasperated groan as I watched Johnson storm off after his parting shot. Johnson made me his target and started aggressively interfering with my work after that day. Ever since, I've had to put up with Johnson storming into the room and picking faults with everything. Even worse, he never arrives by himself. He also began to torment me with Williams, his subordinate. Williams, who works in the sales department and is about my age, was jealous of my promotion. He was a resentful man who always said that I was fortunate to be hired when my boss was let go. It was intolerable that Williams was Johnson's henchman. Their combined pestering made every day a battle. Naturally, I informed higher-ups about Johnson's meddling in an attempt to prevent him from interfering with my work, but Johnson deftly exploited the company's Boston University alumni network to spread false information about me. "I just sat about my subordinates and did no work myself," he said, "and I didn't add to the system's forecasts." Without my awareness, these vicious and unfounded stories began to circulate across the organization. Many others distanced themselves from me because they believed Johnson's statements because of their strong academic ties. I repeatedly complained about Johnson's verbal harassment, but it was ignored. In the end, I had to deal with more abuse from Johnson and Williams each day than actual data. Johnson approached me that day and insisted that I give data analysis about the customers of the sales department. Are you not in charge of data analysis? As data professionals, why don't you want to support the sales division that generates the company's income? Do you lack loyalty? Johnson's request would make sense in a different organization, but the order forecasting system is the main emphasis of my data analysis department. We don't have enough time to make graph data for meetings with the sales department. Williams went right in when I firmly refused. Is that actually a good idea in your opinion? You know what happens if Johnson doesn't agree with you, even if the president does? Johnson has a lot of connections with OKO University alumni. So what? I watched Williams smirk, confused by what he had said. Oh, you didn't graduate, therefore you don't get the importance of university cliques. Unlike you, a middle school graduate, Boston University grads support one another in the workplace. I was annoyed that Williams thought I was a recluse. If so, why not employ a sales assistant with data analysis skills using your connections at Boston University? In addition, the sales department has a number of helpers. Why don't you ask them? The assistants are often chattering when I visit the break area for coffee. They ought to take action regarding those assistants before accusing me of stealing. I struggled, expressing my annoyance. Johnson appeared really stern after seeing my remarks as a critique of his administration. A high school dropout who has the audacity to disparage my subordinates. Who are you, in your opinion? You data folks who just tinker with computers are not like us. Williams joined Johnson in shouting. You're correct. I'm sorry, Smith. Do you treat managers that way? I could have handled this professionally by bowing my head, but I didn't bend. I've discovered from experience that caving into irrational requests simply makes them worse. These two would not be able to take advantage of it if I apologized now. They would keep coming up with reasons to make me serve the sales department. My subordinates would be drawn into it as well. I couldn't allow my hardworking crew to suffer that fate. You were the one who initially disparaged our department as being just data guys. I'm not going to apologize. Williams then yelled, What did you say? And abruptly shoved my shoulder. You act so powerful, even if you simply uphold the feeder system. An order forecasting system could be used by anyone with a college degree. Data guys like you are not needed by us. The business simply feels sorry for you. Williams' remarks clearly unsettled and disturbed my subordinates in the vicinity. Johnson fanned the flames. Indeed. Excellent work, Williams. As long as we have our outstanding sales team, the business would function perfectly without the data analysis section. The reason this high school dropout becomes so haughty is because the president only loves this system too highly. I was taken aback. These two are aware that without FETA, the business cannot operate. Johnson, in particular, who often attends the executive meetings, doesn't seem to see the significance of the system. However, the two persisted in bragging that even sales could keep the system up to date, and that performance would be enhanced by letting go of all the data analysis staff and shifting their pay to the sales department. Yes, it is correct. At the executive meeting next month, let's suggest that the sales department be given direct authority over them. Since the president is currently away, it will undoubtedly pass if we are ready. You'll be the one in command, Williams. You, a college graduate, can manage it with ease, right? Williams gave me a sly look and then gave Johnson a serious response. Obviously, I can succeed if Smith, a high school dropout, can. My repressed annoyance erupted at his remarks. Is that correct? Then I'll give up. If you believe you can, go ahead and try it, but I'll wager you can't. I snapped at Williams, who winced but curtly shot out, "Oh, I'll do it. You're simply getting in the way. You high school dropouts ought to quit this organization." Johnson smiled and took Williams' side. "No need for a middle school graduate to hand over the work. We'll ask the college educated. So you're fired." Those in the vicinity were agitated when it was mentioned that there was no need for a handover. These two, however, ignored the whispers around them and lacked a sense of urgency. Johnson and Williams, his henchmen, both laughed savagely. "You're correct. You're worthless as long as we college graduates are present. This will have serious consequences, you know." However, the two only exchanged glances and chuckled. Does that sound like a loser's whine? Resigning now is too late to change your mind. You caused this yourself. I had no desire to work with them any longer because of Williams' contemptuous demeanor and Johnson's contented smile. Johnson, who denigrated me for lacking a degree, and the other staff members who disapproved of me due to their focus on academic qualifications, were no longer important to me. I started to move toward resignation after whispering to myself that I didn't care about what had happened anymore. The day after I left Company A, I received the following information from my former subordinates. When the order forecasting system ceased producing projections, FETA experienced its first wave of fear. Only the employees of the data analysis department I had left behind were in a panic at that time. Williams, who had partially replaced me as head of the department, was too preoccupied with courting Johnson to deal with the issue. He even shouted, "You guys are college graduates, aren't you?" after his subordinates informed him of it. "Put your minds to work and solve it." Williams said this before he and Johnson left for lunch at a posh hotel nearby. At the start of the following month, the second wave of panic struck. Our company's accounting departments began contacting us to report significant differences in the sales department's quotes and invoices. In one instance, a $40,000 quote for 5 tons of building supplies became an $80,000 invoice. The entire team was in a panic as customers called the sales department and demanded to talk with the person in charge. The sales staff initially believed it to be a straightforward billing error, but they quickly recognized it was much more severe and went white. What on earth is happening? Someone tell me. However, nobody in the sales division was available to respond. They received a deluge of complaints in the interim. Then, when Day Construction, our largest client, called us first thing in the morning, we infuriated them. An official informed Johnson that Day Construction's president had made the decision to discontinue working with us and go with Company B, our rival. When Johnson heard this, he fell to his knees. Before departing for an emergency management meeting, the executive informed Johnson that the company had lost more than $30 million in revenue. In a trance, Johnson hurried to the sales department. Why? How did this occur? Williams approached Johnson, who was seated at his desk looking pale with timidity. "Boss, a few subordinates said that without Smith, the system wouldn't work." Perhaps Smith was the secret to the system, but I ignored them since I assumed they were just complimenting their former boss. Johnson shouted, "That can't be," as he gazed up. Just because a middle school graduate left, how could this have happened? Williams went silent and appeared uncomfortable. "There's no choice," Johnson murmured after a while. "He will gladly return if we offer to return him to his previous position." "How about me? What will become of me?" Williams' face fell in anguish as he begged. Johnson, however, ducked his eyes. "You are to blame for not assuming control in a suitable manner. Simply accept that you will resume your usual job duties. Don't worry, we can resolve this as long as Smith returns." Williams began searching for me, clinging to those words like a man drowning to a straw. In actuality, I had correctly anticipated that this mayhem would ensue upon my resignation. These two believed that FETA was merely a standard order management system, but its forecasting capabilities are what give it its true power. For this reason, company has spent $50 million to put it into effect. But for the system to work properly, data is required. Orders are taken and data is entered into the system by the sales team. The order reception is shown here. Our organization purchases the required industrial materials based on the order data. This is where the order is placed. Nevertheless, there is a serious problem with this approach. Industrial material prices fluctuate. Prices can even rise fivefold in a single year. The recent spike in copper wire thefts is well known. These thefts occur as a result of criminals from nearby Asian nations stealing copper from Japanese building sites and reselling it after learning of the shortage. To put it briefly, the cost of limited resources rises. However, no matter how many orders we receive, we will not be able to make money if we put orders and buy materials when prices are high. Our clientele will stop doing business with us if we charge them exorbitant prices. On the other hand, selling at a low price results in losses right away. Company has spent $500 million creating and implementing the FETA system in order to solve this. FETA keeps track of customer order information, evaluates order volume and timing, and forecasts future orders to arrange advance orders. FETA enables us to place orders when prices are low in supply when orders are received, as demonstrated by the copper wire example from before. Regardless of the season, we don't have to pay exorbitant costs for supplies, and our regular clients may obtain industrial goods at consistent pricing. A win-win system exists. My previous data analysis team entered the data for FETA. It may seem easy to enter the required data, but it might be difficult to transform a variety of data into a format that the system can use. While order data is processed, purchasing data necessitates some degree of price prediction. This implies that we have to enter a lot of data every day, including political changes, stock prices, temperatures, and legal changes. The accuracy of the order projections automatically declines if the data is inaccurate. The only disadvantage of FETA is how difficult and time-consuming data input and gathering are. The data analysis staff was overworked prior to my arrival. I was hired when Jones, our president today, and the vice president at the time, approached me at a startup event and asked for my assistance. At the time, I was working as a pastime developing different software and supporting a friend's startup overseas. I seldom ever go to middle school since I never fit in. My preference for playing with computers at home has been constant. My anxious parents sent me overseas to study languages, even though I had no intention of attending high school and intended to spend my free time on my computer at home. Fortunately, the language school I went to also provided English language IT classes. I soon became fascinated with developing software and apps, and if my classmates asked for a special program, I made it for them for free. I began taking software development seriously when a friend told me that I had a knack that may be valuable. I started to establish myself as I sold my own apps and assisted friends with their enterprises. Jones, who was company as vice president at the time, asked me if I could make their system better. I found it intriguing and agreed to work for his company, but with a stipulation that all software I developed had be patented under my name. I didn't want my inventions taken away from me, even if I was making improvements to their system. I gave some of my students software and apps that were later marketed and made a lot of money. Despite numerous cautions from friends, I decided not to underestimate my abilities. Then, as Jones had hoped, I created software to fix the problems with FETA. All of the data pertaining to changes in the pricing of industrial materials was gathered and examined by this software, which then automatically integrated it into the system. My team's workload decreased as a result, and FETA's forecasting accuracy increased noticeably. Company's performance gradually increased as a result of attracting more customers by being able to purchase supplies at a lower cost than rivals. But of course, I deleted the program I had created for FETA when I quit after arguing with Johnson and Williams. FETA was a bike without a wheel in the absence of the data collection software. Their projections' accuracy steadily declined, ultimately resulting in losses as a result of their inability to correctly integrate order data and their reliance on order receipt data. I saw a haggard Johnson and Williams a month after I had left the organization. They didn't know where I lived, but they had been waiting there every day after learning from my former subordinates which station I used for my commute. They must have been lucky to see me when I was at the station for personal errands. At last, we located you. Kindly return to the branch. Johnson continually begged me in front of the ticket entrance, oblivious to the attention from onlookers. I snarled back, knowing exactly why they were having trouble. What's wrong? As recent college grads, you said you would be able to navigate the system with ease. You shouldn't now require the assistance of a high school dropout. Johnson's face twisted in annoyance at being talked down to by someone they thought was beneath them. Williams took his place and said, I'm sorry, Smith. We'll put you back in charge of the department. Fix FETA for us, please. The phrase reinstate you still conveyed his arrogance. You claimed that at the time, you didn't require any handover from me. Don't you think you'll be okay without me? With a forlorn expression, Williams murmured, almost inaudibly, I don't understand what's wrong with the system. I retorted, Johnson and Williams undervalued the system's value without knowing it, which is the problem, not the system itself. Even those with college degrees find it difficult to navigate this system, but I'm no longer one of them. You'll have to work it out for yourself. I'm not sure. I didn't feel sorry for people who made fun of me for finishing middle school. As I passed through the ticket gate, I thought that firm might not last long at this rate. But when I got in touch with President Jones, I was forced to give in. When Johnson and the others began circulating horrible stories about me, Jones had already been admitted to the hospital for cancer surgery. I was unable to stop them because of this. When Jones eventually returned with the president's assistance, he was surprised to hear that I had quit and that the company was facing more complaints. He looked into it and found out how badly Johnson and Williams had treated me. The executives who treated me badly and believed Johnson because they were Okio University graduates infuriated Jones. Compared to the executive meetings, there were fewer executives in the president's office when I was called in. Smith, I sincerely apologize for the incident. Those that mistreated you have been replaced because I wasn't present to supervise. Academic credentials are not enough to keep this organization afloat. Even though they weren't directly engaged, the executives at the table shuffled uneasily, obviously regretting their role in my resignation. I've brought you here today to see the proper retribution meted out to those who wronged you and harmed the business. This is your chance to defend yourself, Johnson, Williams, if you have anything to say. The two cowering in the corner of the president's office looked up at Jones's words. Well, I had no idea, President. Nobody informed me of the significance of that system when I joined this organization in the middle of my career. But despite Johnson's desperate yelling, no one came forward to support him. Williams smiled nervously and started pleading with the president. I simply couldn't take on Johnson, my university senior. I'm not at fault. Because I didn't have a high school diploma, you were the one who ordered me to leave this company, right? I had to interrupt, and you replaced me. It's difficult for me to accept that you were merely carrying out Johnson's instructions. Jones spoke to the now pale Williams in a chilly manner. You should be aware of the consequences of your statements as a professional. You were obviously jealous of Smith and attempted to drive him away, even if you were just following Johnson's example. In defeat, Williams' shoulders drooped. Jones turned to face the two and spoke forcefully. I think termination for cause is the right course of action for individuals who harmed the organization in this way. I presume that nobody here will continue to defend them on the basis of their academic background. Without a word, the execs nodded. When they saw this, Williams and Johnson fell to the ground. I talked to them. What transpired is that this is worth all of your college contacts. Your poor judgment, which valued people solely on the basis of their educational background, led to this predicament. You really have no hope. Johnson gazed at me, shaking with rage. This would not have occurred if you had adequately conveyed to me the significance of the system. You didn't intentionally tell me because you were envious of my college degree. Still attempting to place the blame on me, I was astounded by Johnson's bravery. Williams, who had been accusing Johnson, now became enraged with me. You're correct. This wouldn't have occurred if you had left the appropriate handover paperwork. I gave a shrug. It was you who claimed that a middle school graduate didn't need to hand you over any money. Your college degree is useless if you can't even recall what you've said. Jones cast a scornful glance down at the two. It's unfortunate that we've hired individuals just like you. I'll make sure the hiring department knows that they shouldn't hire fools based solely on their degrees from now on. The arrogant couple was obviously taken aback by the president's remarks. The executives silently ushered them out of the room, their shoulders hunched. Williams and Johnson were let go. The substantial harm they inflicted on the business and their demeaning actions toward me were the causes. A civil case resulted from my former subordinates' collective reporting of the insults to the president, which included documented proof of the verbal abuse. According to reports, Johnson and Williams are currently having difficulty finding a lawyer who is willing to defend them, and it is likely that they will not get one. They will probably have to spend all of their savings if they lose because they will have to compensate the business and myself with hefty sums. No other business will recruit them because of the reasons for their termination. Having fallen from grace, their once trustworthy Boston University connections are now worthless. They have no other choice and go about their daily lives fearing the day the court would require them to make the payment. I made the decision to make amends after talking to Jones. I became aware that my decision to leave without first consulting the president was ill-advised, since I was fed up with being made fun of for not having a high school degree. I graciously declined Jones' offer of the open vice president post. I've come to the realization that I'm not cut out for a corporate setting that prioritizes seniority and academic credentials because of the current unrest. Rather, I consented to provide the theater a 1-year license to utilize my proprietary software. I charged a leasing fee for it, of course. I consented to get together with my former subordinates from the data analysis department and give them a lecture on the software's operation after work hours as part of the aftercare. All of them are capable, and after they understand the advice I provide them, they ought to be able to develop comparable software and include it into the theater. I've become weary of the construction sector and intend to go back to my everyday habit of developing software and apps that benefit people. I've always been intrigued in the travel industry, so I might now look at prospects there. I was shocked when Jones volunteered to invest right away when I told him I was thinking about launching a software development business. This time next year, I see myself leading a startup as its CEO, eager to explore a new universe.